Greetings adventurers, I'm Lorne Gaming, and I'll be your guild advisor for this video. The Spooktacular Labyrinth event came out not too long ago, and with it we got some new characters added into the game. Japan has had these characters when this event originally happened during last year's Halloween, but the units also got some changes to hopefully bring them up to par with the current units in the game. There are two banners, the Trick Banner and the Treat Banner, and I must say, Ryu is most definitely a treat. However, in a general sense, I think these banners are all tricks because unlike the typical banners, where the first roll gives a guaranteed 4-star, the first roll on these banners are discounted to 200 Iris, and the first guarantee happens on the second roll. So, you'll be spending 600 Iris to get that first guarantee. These are pretty much a definition of what we call trap banners, especially with the Attack on Titan collaboration happening in the near future. So let's make sure you know what you're getting into before you hit that draw 11 button. The first unit I'll go over is the White Rabbit Belle, and I just want to comment on how adorable that bunny hood is on him. I just find it hysterical. He's a magic attacker, but his magic is just a pinch lower than more traditional magic attackers like Summer Fun Lily and Elf's Honor Lafia. His special arts is Luna Traviesa, an AoE ultralight magic attack with a 30% chance to sleep. I say this a lot, but for the most part on special arts, you typically want to use the higher damaging moves that have that temporary boost to strength or magic attached to them. The sleep is nice if you can pull it off, but I don't like depending on luck when I'm using a precious charge in my special arts bar. His first skill is Reverie Reps, an AoE low light magic attack with a 15% chance to sleep. His second skill is Fortis Spes, a 75% magic and agility buff that lasts 4 turns. And his final skill is Pierce Firebolt, a single target fast fire magic attack with an ultra penetration rate. At first glance, it's kinda strange to see that Belle has both light and fire magic type moves, when we've been getting lots of single element characters that synergize together due to element resistance debuffs. His second skill to buff his magic and agility is very solid, since it dramatically increases his magical output, and the agility boost not only lets him normally go first during fights, but also factors into his chance to crit more often. If you're thinking about using Belle for wargames, I myself don't feel very positive about it. His AoE attack is only a low power attack with no temporary magic boost modifier, but it does have a 15% chance to sleep your opponents. With moves like these, you have a chance to sleep all your enemies, but more than likely it will only hit 1 or 2, or even none at all. Then there's the added fact that a lot of people run Ceremonial Flame Hestia, which nullifies the first ailments used, so that needs to be taken into consideration if you want to use Belle for wargames. It's a little gimmicky and fun to use when your sleeps hit, but my personal preference is to rely on guaranteed skill effects like buffs and debuffs, rather than ailments. If you miss your sleeps, then Belle's attack doesn't do too much damage. Belle can be a somewhat viable option for single target fights where you need the magic attacker. He'll hit pretty hard due to his magic buff, and having a chance of critting and going through guards with his high penetration rate. The only thing that hampers him here is the fact that his character weapon is the Hestia knife, which gives physical attack. That means, for Belle, you either have to settle on using a different character weapon and sacrifice some magic attack to take advantage of a possibly 30% crit from them, or use a generic 4-star magic weapon instead. If you already have a solid single target user like Elf's Honor Lafia and Offshore Elf Lafia, or Lovely Travel Lily, then I don't see too much of a point going for this Belle. Roll for the costume! The second character I'll go over is Sweet Devil Lily. She is a magic attacker with mainly dark attacks, and she, like Belle, has just a pinch lower magic stat than the traditional magic attackers. Her special arts is Trick or Sweet, and Ultra Heal that also gets 20% HP regen to your allies for 4 turns. The special sounds like it could be a game changer if you set your special arts preference in wargames to heal, and get this heal off along with the HP regen. But in a lot of cases, it's better to use that charge of special arts for an attack rather than the heal or debuff skill, because there are some units in the game that when limit broken to +5 can pull off critical hits that equal more than your character's maximum health. Crimson Dahlia Tione comes to mind. Her first skill is Sweet Prank, an AoE skill that will drain 10% of your opponent's MP and also has a 30% chance to sleep them. This 30% chance is a lot more reliable than Belle's, so you should have more successes in sleeping enemies. But the one thing to keep in mind is that if your opponent has Ceremonial Flame Hestia, or if you miss your sleeps, you are essentially wasting a move on Lily since this move does no damage and the 10% MP drain may not be as great as you may think, since most war games will last 5 turns max, especially in higher ranks. Her second skill is Magical Wand, an AoE high dark magic attack that also extends the status debuffs on enemies by 1 turn. Her final skill is Bad Trick, an AoE high dark magic attack that debuffs the endurance of enemies by 30% for 3 turns. These last 2 skills work hand in hand, allowing you to use the Bad Trick first and then be able to use Magical Wand from then on, since Magical Wand will extend the endurance debuff every time it's used. This can work well with characters like Wicked Elf Lafia, for example, since she has a skill that reduces magic resistance. Lafia won't have to recast Amplify Agony to reapply the magic resistance debuff, since Lily's Magical Wand will extend the duration. And between those 2 dark magic ladies, you should be doing a decent amount of damage, since you'll benefit from both an endurance debuff and a magic resistance debuff. Of course, you can use Lily's debuff extension for other status debuffs as well. Some passive abilities of note are her 10% extra damage on critical hits, and a bonus 20% light resistance. If you do intend to use Lily, remember to equip her character weapon, Lil Ballista Robin, for maximum effectiveness. Remember to aim for 2 15% crit modifiers when crafting. As for whether or not you should roll for Lily, it depends on whether or not you need a decent AoE magic attacker. But there are many better ones already, like Elf's Honor Lafia for high damage and a different version of Lily from the summer event, Summer Fun Lily, who not only has that debuff extension ability, but higher base power on her attacks, and she also has a skill to remove magic buffs. Sweet Devil Lily definitely has the cute factor down, but be careful before rolling for her. And the final adventurer is my favorite character, Vampiric Fairy Ryu. She could take my blood anytime. This Ryu is pretty unique as far as characters go. She's a defensive type unit, sporting a very high endurance of 756 max limit break, which is almost double the amount of endurance characters normally have. And her max HP is at 3114, about 500 more HP than regular 4-star characters. Her special arts is Vampiric Drain, an AoE ultra dark magic attack that scales with her endurance stat, and it also heals her for 20% of the damage done. This is why Ryu is so unique. Her attack power is based off her endurance rather than strength or magic. Of course, in most cases, especially war games, you want to be using the special arts charge on a physical or magic attacker for damage, but this could be a fun move to use if you're in a pinch in some type of AoE encounter, like during a quest or monsterphilia and you need to heal Ryu. Her first skill is Insight Wind. This move has a 50% chance to taunt your enemies and also buffs Ryu's endurance by 40% for 4 turns. Now, this move actually accomplishes a lot of things at once. First, it has a rather high chance to taunt at least 1 or 2 opponents in war games, stopping your opponent's characters from using AoE attacks and directing single target attacks at Ryu, who just increased her endurance by 40%. And remember, because of Ryu's unique skill set, the endurance gain doesn't just reduce damage, but also increases the damage output of her other moves, since they scale off her endurance stat. Let's go over those last 2 skills. Her second skill is Fairy Vamp, a single target high dark magic attack that scales with her endurance and also heals her for 50% of the damage done. Unfortunately, this skill isn't too useful in war games because it will only hit 1 opponent, and the fact that all character damage is lower for PvP means that the heal won't be too substantial. But if you need a defensive unit to take the attention off your other characters for regular questing, this is a nice move to have at your disposal, since Ryu will be taking the brunt of all the attacks. Her last skill is Vind Chaos, an AoE high dark magic attack that scales with her endurance and also has a temporary endurance boost. The temporary endurance boost is similar to units that have a temporary magic or strength boost. All it really means is that the attack will hit harder than a normal high dark magic attack. Of course, you shouldn't be depending on Ryu to deal damage to your opponents. Even if these moves scale with her endurance stat starts at 756 at +5, as opposed to main damage dealers who usually have their strength or magic stat at around 1300. Her passive abilities of note are a bonus 10% magic resistance, 20% light resistance, and an extra 10% to her critical hits. Ryu is almost a similar case to both Lily and Belle, where it's great when their ailments get applied, but when they miss or if your opponent has Ceremonial Flame Hestia, it almost feels like you're wasting a turn in war games. If you do use Ryu, remember to equip her character weapon Alv's Lumina for 30% crit. Unfortunately, the magic attack won't help too much since her damage is based on endurance. She's definitely a unique character to use, but but I'd be reluctant to try to roll for use in war games. But her costume, 10 out of 10 would die for those thighs and willingly be her vampire familiar. Now let's go over to two assist characters. Here we have mummy goddess Hestia decked out in probably what is 1/4 of a mummy outfit. Her stats are on the average side with a somewhat decent showing in strength and particularly endurance. Her assist skill is Mummy Guidance. At level 60, she'll debuff enemy dexterity by 8% and increase the counter rates of your units by 10%. These amounts change to a 10% dexterity debuff and a 15% counter rate buff when limit broken to +5. The dexterity debuff could be useful in war games, since lowering dexterity will also lower the chance that your opponents will deal a critical hit to your units. Also, if you're using the new Moonlit Wolf bait, then Hestia's counter rate buff will synergize well due to bait dealing bonus damage for each of his counters. Outside of the somewhat gimmicky synergy with bait though, for the most part this Hestia as an assist unit is pretty underwhelming to be taking up one of your assist slots that could be used for something more clear cut, like HP regen or a straight defensive or offensive boost, rather than relying on the chance of your opponent's crits or your own counters. At least her outfit would make a nice addition to your collection though. The second and final assist character from the rerun is Tricky Angel Seer. Her stats, like Hestia, are nothing to write home about, with again, higher strength and magic with a good amount of endurance. Her assist skill is Angelic Fertility. At level 60, she'll debuff the enemy counter rates by 8% and increase the magic of your characters by 10%. If she's a +5, these values will change to a 10% counter rate debuff and a 15% magic buff. The counter rate debuff could be useful if your opponent is using a character like Almighty Fighter Osvi or Moonlit Wolf Bait to increase their counter rate, but that's extremely situational in the long run. The main reason why this seer may be attractive is due to her magic boost. This magic boost is equivalent to the ones that Banquet Queen Freya and Crunchyroll Hime provide, but in my opinion, those two have the more desirable secondary effects. Also, Freya and Crunchyroll Hime actually have a good amount of magic on their characters as opposed to Seer, who questionably has higher strength than magic when she should be intended to be used on a magic character. If you already have one of those two, I don't see the appeal in chasing after Seer, unless of course you want to collect at least one of her for the costume. DanMemo's character art continues to be very appealing. And those are my initial impressions on the 2017 Halloween rerun characters. For the most part, I love the art for all of them, especially Ryu. I wonder why that is. Here's my general advice for these banners. Wait until we know what the Attack on Titan collaboration character's skills will be. These Halloween banners will last until the night that the Attack on Titan event starts, so there will be a small window of time when the Attack on Titan banners and the Halloween banners are up at the same time. Waiting it out will also give you a chance to see how these Halloween characters are performing in war games, since we won't know for sure how effective they'll be until a full war game season passes. But I'm not too optimistic, since Japan has had these characters for a year now, and I haven't seen many of them in the Japanese top rankings. Good things come to those who wait. I'm really looking forward to the Attack on Titan event coming up, but more immediately will be the Familia system update coming next week. I hope all of you are excited for the upcoming content. Until then, have fun with the Halloween event! If you found this video helpful or informative, please give me a like and subscribe to my channel for more content. To stay updated on what I'm doing, follow me on Twitter and join my Discord for any questions and discussion. Continue enjoying your time adventuring in Aurario and the dungeon. This is Lauren Gaming and I'm signing out.